Welcome to Threads of Truth, where we unravel the mysteries and uncover the hidden stories of history. In this video, we delve into the strange and wild events that have shaped our world, from the deadliest civil war in China to top-secret CIA experiments. These stories will leave you questioning what is real and what is just a legend. Let's begin. The Taiping Rebellion was a civil war in China between 1850 to 1864, led by Hong Xiuquan, a Hakka peasant who believed himself to be the younger brother of Jesus Christ. He had visions of God and Jesus and came to believe that he was chosen to lead a religious movement to establish a new world order. The rebellion was sparked by widespread social and economic unrest in China, as well as a widespread belief in millenarian religious movements. The Taiping rebels, who called themselves the God worshippers, quickly gained control of large parts of southern China, including the cities of Nanjing and Wuhan. They established a new capital in Nanjing and declared it the Heavenly Kingdom of Great Peace. The Taiping rebels implemented a number of social and economic reforms, such as the abolition of foot binding, the redistribution of land, and the establishment of a new code of laws and government bureaucracy. They also promoted equality of men and women, abolished slavery and advocated for a new social order based on Confucian values. However, the Taiping rebels faced strong resistance from the ruling Qing dynasty and its imperial army. The Qing dynasty was able to recruit large numbers of soldiers from among the population and also received military assistance from foreign powers, including the United States and Great Britain. After a series of bloody battles, the Taiping rebels were ultimately defeated in 1864, and Hong Xiuquan committed suicide. The Taiping rebellion resulted in the deaths of an estimated 20 to 30 million people, making it one of the deadliest conflicts in world history. The rebellion also had a significant impact on the later political and social development of China, as it weakened the Qing dynasty and paved the way for the overthrow of the imperial system in the early 20th century. Additionally, it also had a significant impact on the Chinese society and culture, which can be seen in the present-day China. The rebellion also marked the first time that a Chinese millenarian movement had been able to establish a state and maintain it for over a decade, which influenced other Chinese millenarian movements in the future. The Bal des Ardents, Ball of the Burning Men, was a masquerade ball held by King Charles VI of France on January 28, 1393. The event was intended to be a celebration and a display of the king's power and wealth, and was attended by many high-ranking members of the court, including the king's brother Louis, Duke of Orleans, who was a central figure in the political life of the kingdom at the time. As part of the festivities, a group of the king's friends, including the Duke of Orleans, were dressed in costumes made of flammable materials such as resin soaked cloth, and were meant to represent wild men. They were then led into the Great Hall of the palace, where they began to dance and entertain the guests. However, a torch brought too close to the costumes set them on fire, and the men were quickly engulfed in flames. The fire spread quickly and it was difficult to put out, as the costumes were made of highly flammable materials. The incident was a tragic accident, but it had serious political and cultural consequences. Several of the participants were severely burned, including the Duke of Orleans, who died from his injuries. The event was seen as a sign of the king's poor judgment and lack of control, and it further damaged his already unstable political and psychological state. The ball was also seen as a symbol of the excesses and decadence of the French court, and it contributed to a growing sense of moral and political crisis in the country. The event also had a significant impact on the cultural and artistic representations of the time, as it was widely reported and discussed by contemporary chroniclers, poets and visual artists. The incident was seen as a symbol of the moral decay of the court and of the kingdom, and it was used as a political tool to attack the king and his court. The Bal des Ardents is remembered as an important moment in the history of medieval France, not only for the tragic accident that occurred but also for the political and cultural context in which it took place. It continues to be studied and debated by historians and scholars today, as a window into the complex political and social dynamics of late medieval France, and the role of the monarchy and the court in shaping the culture and society of the time. The Cadaver Synod, also known as the Cadaver Trial, was a highly unusual and controversial posthumous ecclesiastical trial of Pope Formosus, who had died in 806 AD. The trial was ordered by Pope Stephen VI, who was the successor of Formosus. Stephen VI was deeply resentful of Formosus and his papacy, and he sought to undo many of Formosus' actions and invalidate his papacy. The corpse of Formosus was exhumed from its tomb and brought to the Lateran Basilica in Rome, where the trial was held. The corpse was dressed in pontifical vestments and propped up on a throne, and a deacon was appointed to speak on its behalf. The trial lasted several days and was attended by a large number of bishops and cardinals, who were summoned to Rome to participate in the proceedings. During the trial, the corpse was accused of a variety of crimes, including perjury, violating church law, and also for his alleged role in the election of his own successor. The corpse was found guilty and its fingers were cut off, as they were believed to have been used to give blessings during his papacy. Additionally, the corpse was stripped of its vestments, and thrown into the Tiber River. The Cadaver Synod caused great scandal and outrage among the people, and it is considered one of the most bizarre and disturbing events in the history of the Catholic Church. Many considered the trial to be a desecration of the body of a pope, and a sacrilege against the Church. The event also led to a period of instability and turmoil within the Catholic Church, and it was eventually annulled by Pope Theodore II, who was elected shortly after the trial. The Cadaver Synod is still remembered as a dark chapter in the history of the Catholic Church, and it serves as a reminder of the political machinations and power struggles that have occurred within the Church over the centuries. The event also highlights the harshness of the medieval justice system, which allowed a posthumous trial and punishment, and it serves as a stark contrast to the principles of fairness and justice that are upheld by modern legal systems. The legend of the Green Children of Woolpit has been subject to various interpretations, and the debate on whether it's a factual event or a folklore. The story of the Green Children is first recorded in the 12th century by the chronicler Ralph of Coggeshall, and later by William of Newburgh and Gilbert of Hoyland in the 12th and 13th century. The account of Ralph of Coggeshall has the most details. He wrote that two children, a boy and a girl, were found in the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England, in the 12th century. They were green in color, and spoke a language that no one could understand. The boy died soon after they were found, but the girl survived and learned to speak the local language. She explained that she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land where everything was green, and that they had come through a cave which led them to Woolpit. Ralph also added that the children were found by some local farmers while they were working in the fields. The fact that the children were green in color and spoke an unknown language has led to the idea that they may have been from a different country or culture. This theory is supported by the fact that the girl was able to learn and speak the local language, indicating that she was not completely alien to the area. A theory suggests that the children were from a subterranean world. This theory is based on the idea that the children were found in a pit, and the girl's statement about coming from a place called St. Martin's Land, which is an underground realm in medieval folklore. While another theory suggested that the children were suffering from a rare skin condition that caused their green coloration, such as chlorosis, which is a condition caused by a lack of iron in the diet, which can result in a greenish pallor of the skin. In conclusion, the legend of the Green Children of Woolpit is an intriguing medieval story that has captivated the imagination of many for centuries. The true origins of the children and their green skin remain a mystery, and the theories and explanations suggested are varied and inconclusive. The fact that the legend was recorded by different chroniclers adds some credibility to the story, but it's hard to confirm if it was a factual event or a folklore. The CARRINGTON event is considered to be one of the most powerful geomagnetic storms in recorded history. It was caused by a massive coronal mass ejection, CME, that was directed towards Earth and was triggered by an X-class solar flare, which is the most intense class of solar flares. The CME caused a geomagnetic storm, which is a disturbance in the Earth's magnetic field caused by the interaction of solar particles with the Earth's magnetic field. The geomagnetic storm caused by the CARRINGTON event produced auroras as far south as Hawaii and Cuba. These auroras were described as being so bright that newspapers could be read as easily as in full daylight. The event also caused widespread disruptions to telegraph systems, with some telegraph operators reporting that they could continue sending and receiving messages even after disconnecting their power sources. This is because the solar particles from the CME caused electrical currents to flow through the telegraph lines, producing a phenomenon known as telegraph pole fires. The CARRINGTON event also caused other disturbances to the Earth's magnetic field. For example, compass needles in ships at sea were observed to deviate from their normal orientation, and some telegraph lines experienced short circuits and sparks. The event is also believed to have caused a number of fires in telegraph offices and other buildings due to the electrical currents flowing through the wires. The CARRINGTON event serves as a reminder of the potential impact that solar activity can have on our modern technological infrastructure. Today, our modern society is heavily dependent on technology that relies on electrical systems, such as power grids, communication systems, and GPS navigation. A similar event occurring today could cause widespread power outages, disruptions to communication systems, and other problems. It is important to note that solar activity is not constant, and there are periods of increased solar activity known as solar maxima, during which the chances of a solar storm occurring are higher. Therefore, it's important to be prepared for such events. Project X-ray, also known as the Bat Bomb Project, was a proposed plan to use bats as a delivery system for incendiary bombs during World War II. The idea was proposed by Dennis Lytle S. Adams in January 1942, who suggested that bats could be used to carry small incendiary devices and then released over Japan, where they would fly into buildings and roost in the eaves. The incendiary devices would then ignite and cause fires. The proposal was taken seriously by the U.S. military, and the National Defense Research Committee, NDRC, began testing the feasibility of the plan. The NDRC conducted several experiments, including training bats to carry small incendiary bombs and testing the ability of bats to survive at high altitudes. Bats were also experimented with incendiary bombs with a timer, so when the bats reached their roosting place the bomb would explode. The bats were to be transported in specially designed containers that would be dropped from airplanes at high altitude over Japan. The containers would then open and release the bats, which would fly to buildings and roost in the eaves. The incendiary bombs they carried would then ignite and cause fires. The idea behind this was that traditional bombing had been ineffective in starting widespread fires in Japan due to the country's strict fire prevention codes and widespread use of fireproofing materials on buildings. The initial tests of the bat bomb were promising and further developments were conducted. A special bat bomb casing was designed to protect the bats from the cold air at high altitude, and a special automatic release mechanism was developed to release the bats from the aircraft. The U.S. military also experimented with different types of incendiary bombs, including napalm and thermite, in order to maximize the fire-starting potential of the bat bombs. However, the project faced several challenges and ultimately proved to be impractical. The bats had a tendency to fly away from the target area, and many were killed by the cold temperatures at high altitude. Additionally, the bat bombs were difficult to handle and there were concerns about the potential for accidental detonations. The risk of bats being seen as a biological weapon also became a concern. In 1944, the U.S. military abandoned the project due to these technical difficulties, lack of progress and the cost of the development. No bat bomb was ever used in combat. Despite the project's failure, it did generate some useful research in the field of incendiary bombing, and some of the technologies developed for the bat bomb were later used in other weapons systems. Operation Acoustic Kitty was a CIA project that aimed to use cats as listening devices for espionage purposes. The idea behind the project was that cats could be surgically implanted with microphones and transmitters and then trained to go to specific locations, such as foreign embassies, in order to listen in on conversations. The project was led by Dr. John Lilly, a neuroscientist and expert in animal behavior, who believed that cats could be trained to carry out specific tasks and that their small size and natural tendency to wander would make them ideal spy animals. Dr. Lilly's team began researching on training cats to move towards certain locations, to stay in certain places, and to ignore others. The first cat was surgically implanted with a microphone, a transmitter, and a power source, and its ears were surgically altered to make it look more natural. The cat's transmitter was activated by a switch on its tail. After the surgery, the cat was trained to go to a specific location, and its movements were monitored via the transmitter. The first field test of the cat was conducted in Moscow in 1963, with the cat being released near the Soviet compound. However, the cat was run over by a taxi on its way to the compound and the mission was deemed a failure. The CIA team was surprised that the cat didn't make it to the target location, and it was later revealed that the cat was not following the training. Instead, it went to a park across the street and was hit by a car. Despite the failure, the CIA continued to work on the project for several more years, but ultimately it was deemed too impractical and was eventually abandoned. The costs of the project, both in terms of money and human resources, were deemed too high, and there were concerns about the ethical implications of using animals in this way. Additionally, the technical challenges of miniaturizing the necessary equipment and ensuring that it could withstand the rigors of being implanted in a living animal were significant. The existence of Operation Acoustic Kitty was not made public until 2001, when the CIA released a document about it as part of a Freedom of Information Act request. The project was considered as one of the most controversial projects that the CIA has ever undertaken, and it raised many ethical questions about the use of animals in espionage operations. The Halifax explosion was one of the deadliest disasters in Canadian history. The Mont Blanc, a French cargo ship, was carrying a large amount of explosives, including benzol, nitroglycerin, and TNT, as well as picric acid and gun cotton. The SS Emo, a Norwegian vessel, collided with the Mont Blanc in the Narrows, a strait connecting the upper Halifax harbor to Bedford Basin. The collision caused a fire on the Mont Blanc, and the crew abandoned ship. However, the fire spread and the ship began to drift towards the Halifax shore. At 9:04 a.m. on December 6, 1917, the Mont Blanc exploded in a massive blast. The explosion was equivalent to 2.9 kilotons of TNT, and the blast wave devastated an area of more than 2 square kilometers, destroying or damaging buildings and infrastructure. The explosion was heard as far away as Cape Breton Island, almost 200 kilometers away. The death toll from the Halifax explosion was estimated at around 2,000 people, with many more injured. Many of the casualties were caused by the extreme temperatures of the blast, which set buildings and homes on fire, and by flying debris. The explosion also caused a tsunami, which further damaged the already devastated area. The Halifax explosion also had significant long-term effects on the city and its residents. Many people were left homeless and had to live in temporary shelters. The explosion also caused a shortage of food and other essential supplies, as well as a shortage of doctors and nurses to treat the injured. The disaster also had an impact on the economy of Halifax and the surrounding area. The Halifax explosion was one of the worst disasters in Canadian history and had a lasting impact on the city and its residents. It also served as a reminder of the dangers of storing and transporting large amounts of explosives in populated areas. The disaster also led to the creation of a number of organizations and initiatives aimed at improving emergency response and disaster relief efforts in Canada. Thank you for watching our video on the strange and wild events of history. We appreciate your interest and hope you found the content informative. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more historical content, and please leave a comment on which event you found most intriguing, and we'll make sure to cover more of it in our next video.